All right, let's dive right into this explainer, summarizing some truly game-changing ideas from the psychology of money. We're going to shatter the ultimate money myth right out of the gate. Look, you probably think the secret to building insane wealth is all about complex trading strategies, having an off-the-charts IQ, or getting that elite Ivy League degree, right? Well, actually, scratch that. What if I told you that being super smart and highly educated absolutely does not guarantee financial success? In reality, how you behave with your money is infinitely more important than how smart you are. To really wrap our heads around this, let me hook you with this crazy paradox. Just picture two totally different people for a second. On one side, you've got this highly educated executive, a literal millionaire with a Harvard MBA who totally dominated the finance world. Okay? And on the other side, we have a humble janitor who spent his entire life sweeping floors and wiping glass. Now here's the kicker. By the end of their lives, that brilliant executive went completely, utterly bankrupt, while our humble floor sweeper, he amassed a massive fortune. I mean, how is that even mathematically possible?
To give you a real sense of scale here, that janitor left behind $8 million. If we adjust that to Indian rupees today, factoring in inflation, we're looking at roughly 121 crore. Yeah, let that massive figure sink in for a second. 121 crore rupees. And he didn't win the lottery. He didn't invent some crazy viral tech startup. He simply had a fundamentally different psychological approach to his money.
So let's break this down in section 1, the janitor and the executive. It's just fascinating to see the stark contrast between these two. As our source material reveals, the secret to their financial outcomes had almost nothing to do with the size of their paychecks and everything to do with their personalities. Ronald Reed, our janitor, was quiet, he was patient, and he played the long game. He just consistently saved and slowly invested in solid blue-chip stocks. On the flip side, you have executives like Richard Fuscone, who was driven purely by ego and super impulsive spending. The source highlights these insane stories of Wall Street ego. Like there's this one tech millionaire who literally paid a waiter $1,000 to get him gold coins just so he could skip them across the ocean like rocks. Or another guy who shattered a $500 lamp and threw $5,000 at a waiter just to shut him up. Fuscone himself borrowed heavily to fund this opulent, over-the-top lifestyle. And you know what happened? When the 2008 financial crisis hit, he lost absolutely everything. Which perfectly leads us to section 2, finance is a soft skill. We really need to completely redefine what finance actually is. You know, we're basically taught to treat it like physics or engineering, like it's this hard, rigid science. But it's really not. Unlike medicine, where a janitor obviously can't just walk into an operating room and perform heart surgery better than a trained doctor, finance plays by totally different rules. Finance is a soft skill. In the world of money, your emotional control, your patience, and your daily behavior matter way, way more than your academic pedigree. You can literally be the smartest coder or the top doctor in your field, but if you can't regulate your emotions, you're going to destroy your wealth. Ronald Reed succeeded precisely because he mastered this soft skill of patience. This whole idea is summed up perfectly by this concept. Finance is taught like math, but people make money decisions based on emotions. Think about it. A spreadsheet might tell you, hey, just save exactly 5,000 rupees a day to reach your goal. And sure, that's super easy on paper. But then real life happens, right? You're walking through a mall and those ridiculously expensive items are placed right at your eye level. Or you go out to eat, someone says, hey, let's just split this huge bill evenly. And your ego takes over so you don't look cheap. We don't act like cold logical calculators. We are messy, emotional human beings. Moving right along to section 3, luck, risk, and success. So if it's not all just cold math, what else is pulling the strings? Well, we have to talk about two massive, invisible forces that dictate literally every financial outcome in life: luck and risk. And honestly, we almost always underestimate them. There's a story in the book that perfectly illustrates this. It's about two equally brilliant friends. Bill Gates had this crazy 1-in-a-million stroke of luck. He happened to attend Lakeside School, which was one of the only schools in the entire world with a computer back then. He had the access and, of course, the drive. But he had a best friend named Kent Evans. Kent was just as smart, had the exact same tech ambitions, but tragically, he experienced a 1-in-a-million risk. He died in a mountaineering accident before he even graduated. Same brains, same ambition, but totally different. Unmeasurable forces shaped their destinies. Because of this reality, you absolutely must beware of survivorship bias. Do not just blindly copy billionaires or idolize the ultra-wealthy. We really only ever see the people who survived the game, right? The ones who make it onto the cover of Forbes magazine. But Forbes doesn't publish lists of the thousands of brilliant, incredibly hardworking people who failed simply because they drew the bad card of risk. When we look at success, we've got to respect the massive silent roles that luck and risk actually play. All right, section 4, the moving goalpost trap. Now we're getting into the everyday psychological traps that are actively destroying our wealth right now. And the biggest one? The trap of the moving goalpost. The source outlines this perfectly. We all fall victim to social comparison. If your neighbor rolls up with the iPhone 15, suddenly you feel like you need the iPhone 16. We see this crazy ego-driven spending everywhere. Even billionaires like the Ambanis are reported to use daily helicopters essentially just to flex on each other. And for us everyday folks, it's the instant gratification trap. You know the feeling. You order midnight snacks on Blinkit for 300 rupees just because you want the luxury of not walking 5 minutes down to the store for a 5-rupee item. We end up spending unnecessarily just to feel this fleeting temporary sense of status. Which brings us to this absolutely crucial truth. The hardest financial skill is getting the goalposts to stop moving. Seriously, if your expectations just endlessly rise every time your income goes up, you're never actually going to feel successful. You put in all this effort, you finally hit a target, and immediately, bam, you demand a higher result. You end up constantly running on this exhausting financial treadmill, getting absolutely nowhere. Let's shift gears to section 5. True wealth is invisible. So how do we actually step off that endless treadmill? Well, we need a complete paradigm shift about what wealth actually looks like. We have to separate the flashy, visible spending from real, foundational financial security. Listen, luxury cars, Rolex watches, massive mansions, they're just proof of money leaving an account. When we see someone driving a brand new Ferrari, we aren't seeing their bank balance. All we actually know for sure is that they have thousands of dollars less than they did before they bought the car. We're conditioned to judge wealth by what we can visually see, but that is literally just spending. The explainer really drives this home with that iconic quote from Fight Club: "We buy things we don't need to impress people we don't like." It's so true, isn't it? We spend our hard-earned money just to signal a totally fake status to complete strangers on the street, and we sacrifice our own future security to do it. It is the ultimate ego trap. And here is the real aha moment. True wealth is invisible. True wealth is the unspent money just sitting quietly in an investment portfolio or a savings account. It's the money that gives you options instead of obligations. Think about it. When you buy a massive house on a huge loan, you now have the strict obligation to pay that debt every month. But when you save or invest that money instead, you are quite literally buying yourself freedom. The freedom to choose where you want to eat, when you want to quit a toxic job, and how you actually want to spend your time. And finally, section 6, reasonable over rational. This brings us to the ultimate, most practical takeaway for how you and I should actually handle our personal finances every single day. We need to choose the dinner table over the spreadsheet. What on earth does that mean? Well, spreadsheets demand cold, rational, flawless mathematical optimization. A spreadsheet will tell you to aggressively invest every single penny into the highest yielding, riskiest stock. But we are humans, and humans make financial decisions at the dinner table with our families. We need emotional peace. The best financial plans are rarely the ones that look perfect on a calculator. They are the reasonable ones, the ones that actually let you sleep soundly at night without having a panic attack every time the stock market dips. And to actually achieve that peace of mind, you need what legendary investor Benjamin Graham calls a margin of safety. This is basically the crucial financial buffer between what you have right now and total bankruptcy. Look, the world is completely unpredictable. You simply cannot forecast the next global crisis or a random personal emergency. But by keeping a solid margin of safety, money deliberately set aside just for the unknown, you protect yourself from all those massive, unpredictable risks we talked about earlier. So, let's quickly summarize all this dinner table wisdom we've unlocked today. First, prioritize your own independence and freedom way above just looking rich to strangers. Second, always acknowledge that invisible forces like luck and risk are silently shaping everyone's success, so stay humble. Third, always leave a margin of safety in your bank account. And finally, figure out your own personal definition of enough so that your goalpost actually stops moving. At the end of the day, money is simply a tool to buy your own freedom, not someone else's approval. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final provocative question to ask yourself the very next time you open your wallet. Are you building invisible wealth to free yourself, or are you just spending money to look rich to others? Just take a second to really think about that. It's time we start treating our finances less like a math test and more like the ultimate soft skill.